For the 20th anniversary of September 11th, a day that is sadly no longer remembered because so many years have passed, I wanted to sit down and view a couple of videos that I found before the algorithm takes them away again once the day passes, and because they were taken just shortly in the months and weeks before these terrorists murdered American citizens simply because they happened to be American citizens. And while politicians out there talk about some people did something, this was not some people, this was specific people who did a specific thing and murdered innocent people. Now, this is not to say that they have a monopoly on that, but it was definitely a symbolic moment. And I wanted to take some time to share this with you because I don't know anyone who died there, but there are people who do, and these are real people. And it's said that you die 3 times. You die when you actually die. You die when everyone who knows you is dead. And you die when everything you left behind is gone. And in this first video, we're going to look at somebody who left everything behind. So this individual we're going to look at here, this is an interview with the window washer of the World Trade Center, whose work is no longer there. So this is one of the people that's the most likely to disappear from our lives and from our annuals because everything that he did no longer exists already on that day, including his life. So in this video, what we're going to see is a discussion of this man and his work. It's going to show us a little bit about the building we see here and the towers that he cleaned. This is a real man, a man who did his work and was probably at work when the planes came, was probably in his place. Some of the people in the comments are very critical. He could have done more, he should have done more, didn't he know what was happening? I am inclined to think about him in terms of his family, in terms of the people he left behind, in terms of how they felt and how they must have known. To see the building burn, to see the second collision that we see there in the video, to think about his son that they are interviewing here, who is concerned about his well-being and looking for him, hoping that he's still alive. The window washer here was just a man doing his job. He wasn't even born in America. I think it looks like he's from the Netherlands based on the translation here. That this is a man who wasn't an American national, who came here to make a better life for his family, and the people who killed him came here and they didn't make a better life for anyone, including their own families. So this is a man who died there, a man who wasn't famous, a man who didn't do anything heroic except for doing his job. And these are probably the most common stories, people who went about their business, were at work as usual, doing the things that were required of them in order to earn a living and take care of their families. And this is the kind of person that we need to remember, because we talk about the firemen and the emergency responders, but remember that there were thousands of regular Americans who worked in this building who didn't have anything to do with terror or the actions of the government or the actions of the previous administration. Because remember, this was during the very first year of George Bush's administration. So they had nothing to do with his politics necessarily, and this had been in the works since before George Bush was elected. It's interesting, too, to look back here at the people, to look at when journalists actually seem to give a flying pinwheel about the people on whom they were reporting in their stories. So we're going to pause now, and then after this finishes up, and look at another video which is taken from the inside of the towers and not focusing on anyone individually. So this is some tourist video shot in the World Trade Center a couple of months before the attack occurred. So let's mute so I can talk while I watch it. So anyway, this is some scenery from inside the tower, from what appears to be the ground level on an escalator up. One of the things that struck me about this footage is how normal Americans looked 20 years ago. Something has definitely happened to us in the last 20 years that has changed us. Because as you look at them, there's like almost no one around, and a lot of the people are actually physically fit, even though they're just meandering around and minding their own business. So something in the last 20 years has changed. This was definitely a definitive moment when these towers were collapsed by terrorists. And the towers are very impressive. I've never been there, and I've not been to the site because New York is not really a city that appeals to me. But I know that it is home for many people, and I know that these are family members. So you look at the outside of the building, you see some of the businesses that are there. We're going to go inside, and I have to wonder, watching this video, how many tourists were in the video? See, there's the token fat guy. How many tourists were in the building who weren't even from New York who were killed that day because they were minding their own business? So yes, there's some 90s looks to these, but they're very average-looking people when Americans look like everyone else. So something has definitely happened to us besides politically speaking. But it's interesting to look at this building, to look at how this is not a place of evil. This is not a place of frenetic activity. This is just some ordinary people out looking at the sights in New York City, minding their own business. And what's very, very interesting is that shortly after this, about 6 weeks later, these buildings won't even exist anymore. And this view will not be possible anymore. In the comments of this video, there were some people who commented on going up and seeing the view from here that you can see of New York City around it. And it's very fascinating just to see the sprawl. From up here, it looks very peaceful. From up here, it looks actually sort of welcoming. It just looks like a big city. There's the Statue of Liberty. That's as close as I've been to New York City. So it doesn't look like a dangerous or an evil place, even though I'm sure there are dangerous and evil places in it and dangerous and evil people there. But for the most part, it's filled with average people going about their average lives. And that's the thing to remember about September 11th is there were innocent people who were killed that day who were minding their own business. That is usually not the business of any war or any government to go after people who are minding their own business and living their lives peaceably and not interfering with anyone else's ability to live their lives as they desire. We now live in a world 20 years later, perhaps because of these events, where governments and government officials get involved in things that they don't belong in because they want to be part of dictating terms because they want power. This is a good excuse that they use to take it in memory of the victims. And yet you don't hear them talk about the window washer. You don't hear them talk about these individuals who are here as tourists or any of the people who worked there. You'll hear them talk about the first responder heroes, many of whom are dead because of cancers and such that they got from working on the pile, as they call it, after the towers collapsed. But remember that at the end of the day, most of these are just regular people who are minding their own business, not doing anything in particular to evoke threats or to lose their lives. And that's how most people are. They're mostly just going about minding their own business, feeding themselves, doing their chores, tending to their families, visiting their friends. For the most part, that's what most people in every country are doing. That it is a small set of people in every country that's going around and creating problems for the rest of them. And perhaps the thing I desire to enhance and reiterate for September 11th is a message of peace and a message of brotherhood. Yes, there are evil men out there. And yes, those evil men do evil things. But most people are not, generally speaking, doing evil things, or nor are most people evil people. As C.S. Lewis writes in the preface to the 1963 edition of the Screwtape Letters, I share his sentiment, and I quote, "I do not believe that if you take away all that is good in a man, you are left with a bad man. I believe that if you take away all that is good in a man, you are left with nothing at all." End quote. And I believe that if you can strip away your pride, your arrogance, and if you can manage to chip away at the pride and arrogance of others who appear to hate you and find the hidden rudiments of the child of God in every man, you'll find that at the end of the day, what they desire to do most is the same thing that you desire to do most. To enjoy good food, to enjoy good company, to love your neighbors, your families, your friends, to get satisfaction out of the work that you do, and to be left to do what you want to do. Sadly, there are people who don't do that, and there are people who don't believe that, who rise to the highest echelons and use these individuals and their actions as an excuse to oppress you. And so we're beset on both sides by both friend and foe, self-identified though they may be, who both conspire and combine against us to disturb our peace. So for September 11th, let us have peace, let us have brotherhood, let us remember the dead, remember that they are our families and friends. Remember those that we love. Mourning and remembering them is the best way that they say to honor those you love who are no longer with you. And for those of you who still have those you love around, make memories with them while you can. Because you have no idea what might happen tomorrow, just like these people didn't know, that would disrupt their families and their felicitations forevermore. If you weren't alive then, I encourage you to look into the events. Find some of these stories, not just the news reports about the tragedies, and definitely not just the political spin, because for a brief moment, 20 years ago, America came together, and an attack on one of us was an attack on all of us. And it was an interesting thing to see. We are one people, one nation under God, indivisible. Let's show the world that that means something. Godspeed. Good luck.